Roxo Media House.
Welcome back to Fortitude. I am J.W. Wilson, the place where stories never die. Thank you, Captex Bank. The Captex Bank Studios, where we sit today, Chann. They make all this possible for us. Today's guest, this man right here, Chann McRae. Some of you people out there have heard of him. He's got an incredible story we're about to talk about. Chann, first off, thanks for being here. We welcome you to the Captex Studio in Fortitude. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
You, sir, have done quite a bit in this early. You're fairly young for a guy who's accomplished so much, but you're an Albany, Georgia native. You've been a professional cyclist from 1996 through 2003. You're a triathlete, continue to be a triathlete. You're currently with Austin PD as a bike patrol officer, correct?
Correct.
And you are now currently one of the directors of Roxo Racing, a female professional cycling team that will be launched next year. But backing up from the beginning, Albany, Georgia. Tell me a little about Albany, Georgia, and your childhood.
Albany, Georgia, that goes way back, but obviously my parents are from Georgia. Grew up in Albany, but moved to Virginia early on. Memories in Albany are just like a slow lifestyle, nice, relaxed, and enjoyed my time there. But as short as it was, I just remember like the people in Georgia were awesome. So,
how did cycling come into your life? How did you discover that you could ride a bike or even triathlete type activities?
Cycling did not enter my life until I moved to Plano, Texas.
Okay,
and that had to have been sometime when I was in, I think, 4th, 5th grade. And at the same time, I moved to Plano, Texas. This other guy moved to Plano, Texas. His name was Lance Armstrong.
I've heard about him, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, but you guys are about the same age?
We're he's born a month ahead of me. And so I don't know if you guys had it when you were growing up, but the presidential physical fitness test, like every elementary school used to do it. And
I don't recall that, but I might have.
There were these standards. It's like how many push-ups, how many pull-ups, sit-ups.
Okay, fair.
I think there was an 8-minute run involved and a few other things. But I went at Dooley Elementary School. I held the record. And then this new kid shows up who is Lance Armstrong now. And he claims that he crushed my record. And I was
Which record are we talking about?
For the entire test across the board, for the sit-ups, the push-ups, the pull-ups, and the 8-minute run.
Okay.
He said that his score, he outscored me, and he went faster than I did. And I was like, that's not true, because we weren't competing head-to-head. The gym teacher was just taking times, and like she never displayed the time.
Fair.
And I was like, no, you didn't beat me. And that was in, I think, 5th grade. And from that day forward, it was game on. And just grew up both entering triathlons, both entering cycling events. And I think at a really early age, it was hyper competitive.
Were you guys friendly competitive, or was it beat each other no matter what?
I think you would probably call it frenemy.
Frenemy? Okay.
So to this day, it's still probably called frenemy.
Frenemy, beautiful. I got a few people I could put in that category of that too. When did you personally realize that you were good? You were better than the average cat at riding a bicycle?
That was probably at the US National Professional Long Course Triathlon Championships, where at least two guys of the big four, which were Mark Allen, Scott Molina, Dave Scott, and Scott Tinley. They were the guys who like dominated Hawaii Ironman back in the day. And Dave Scott was definitely at the race, and Lance was at the race. And I came out of the water like pretty much with Dave Scott and almost outbiked Dave Scott. And then Lance beat both of us off the bike and had about probably 5 minutes on Dave Scott and I going into the run. and I ran Lance down, and Dave Scott ended up winning the event. And there's another guy named Kenny Glaw. He was either, maybe Kenny Glaw won, Dave Scott was second, and I was third or fourth. But at that point in time, the US Olympic Training Center for the cycling took notice of both of us, Lance and I, and they recruited us to go to Colorado Springs, live at the Olympic Training Center, and go race in the Junior World Championships in road cycling in Moscow, Russia.
Oh, wow.
And that was kind of where it all began.
Okay. That's about what year about was that when that happened?
I think I was 89, and I was a senior, either a junior or senior in high school, and I had to leave my Plano East High School. I had to move out to the Olympic Training Center. I had to do all of my credits remotely. Got through that, and then from that, pretty much the Junior World Championships forward, I put everything into professional cycling.
Oh, wow. I see in 96 you finally did you turn pro in 96?
Was
amateur up to that point?
Amateur back then, we were paid amateurs.
Okay.
And I mean, I could make a living doing it. We were paid quite well through USA Cycling. And then in 96, I really probably should have turned pro in 1995 because I'd won the national championships for amateurs in 95. And
you also won at 92.
Yeah, I won in 92, but I was still quite young, so I wasn't ready to go pro yet. But in 95, I was ready. And in 95, I went to Tour of China. The current world champion was in the race, Gianni Bugno, and also a good friend of mine, Jonathan Vaughters, who runs EF right now, was in the race as well with his team. And we were racing to the top of this climb that finished on the Great Wall of China.
Oh, wow.
And the race was super fast. I was having a really good day. Gianni Bugno, who's the world champion, somehow after it whittled down to 5 or 6 riders, it was myself and Gianni Bugno, and I was climbing next to him. I was like, this is awesome. And I ended up beating him. And then Jonathan Vaughters' team that he was riding on Santa Clara Porcelana took notice that I just beat Gianni Bugno, and they asked me to race for them the next year in 96.
Oh, wow.
And that's what started my career in Europe.
This is, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but was it Porcelana?
Yes.
Porcelana Santa Clara, Samara?
That was the Russian side of the
Beautiful.
things.
That was nice. That was your first team. You're getting paid. If we can ask, what kind of money are we talking about at 96, your first contract? Can we mention it?
It was, yeah, you can mention it. It's not, if you even consider it worth mentioning, but I think back then, they're like, you can ride for us. We don't have much money. We can pay you like $10,000, but it's a good opportunity for you to like show yourself and get yourself in the spotlight and get to a bigger program.
Which is exactly what it did, right?
It did that.
How are you making ends meet around that 10? If that 10,000 was your base salary, how are you making other money by winning races and things like that?
Well, so Santa Clara actually provided the housing. I lived in Leon, Spain, in a flat with I think 8 Russians and myself and Jonathan Vaughters, and they would pick us up if we were racing in Spain, drive us to the races, drive us back. Our food was provided because there was a restaurant below the flat the food wasn't very, to this day, I can't believe I ate that food because there weren't really nutrients in it, but I ate it and it sustained us. And the guys on the team were awesome. I mean,
this is a fun existence, I'm guessing, right? Because you're with your element, you're with your guys, and it's all about cycling, right?
It's all about cycling, and you're just going from race to race to race.
So you're not complaining, you're not unhappy, you're loving this period of your life.
They're taking care of you, and you're performing. There was some, we weren't always performing though. Sometimes we were getting our butts handed to us, and you'd come out of those races, and you're just like, I just got completely destroyed. There were races like Vuelta al País Basque, which is probably the hardest 5-day stage race in the world to this day, that I just remember that it was just me off the back with like 10 or 15 other guys just struggling to make the time cut. But that's what pushed me to the next level. So,
why did that only last a year? You moved on to Die Continentale the next year?
So the team went bankrupt.
So that before we move on, but is that a common thing with sports teams? Because I see a lot of these go out of business because they run out of money. It's the sponsors just stops being interested in paying that or being able to pay for it, so the team dies.
Yeah, well,
simply put,
yeah. It's. I think nowadays it's like if you're talking about a world team, it won't go down like that. But back then it was just like, okay, let's land the sponsor. Let's perform the best we can. I hope they're in for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way it went. That was in the late 90s. Since then, it's evolved.
Where's your frenemy and all that during this time, 96, 97?
So
where's he
he's
living?
racing for Motorola, which is a world team, and he's definitely thriving. He became world champion, and so he was world champion. I think it was 94 or 95 or something like that. But in 96, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer and had to take some time off. But I mean, he came back from that really strong in 97. Mm-hmm. So
in 97, you're with is it Di Continentale?
Di Continentale. It's actually like
Olympia.
Yeah, it's part of it has connections with the Dortmund FC team.
Okay. You won the Lancaster Classic. You in the first Union Invitational, you a couple of seconds and thirds. That was a really big year for you. It was a huge year for you, actually, right?
That opened the door for me. I was pretty much saved. My career was saved by a guy on the national team. His name's Chris Yankee, and he's like, "Hey, I'm racing for this German small pro team, Di Continentale. If you want, come to Mallorca, join us there, and then we'll get you to some of the biggest races in Germany. And if you're good, we'll get back to the States as well and just perform, man. And you're on track, but we still got to finish it off."
Right. This sounds like an amazing existence. You're traveling all over Europe. You're seeing it, and you're seeing it on the road. I mean, I can't imagine a more desirable thing for an athlete to be doing. After the second stop, you moved in 98, you went to Saturn, another company that went defunct, right? Another sponsor.
Does Saturn even sell cars now?
I don't really believe they're existing.
I don't think they exist anymore.
So Saturn, when you were at Saturn, you won a first in one of the German races that I couldn't pronounce. And you got a couple seconds that same year as well. So can we talk money? What are you making in these days? Is it gone up from 10?
It went up I think I signed with Saturn for like 37,500. So that was getting a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And I had the opportunity to lead a really good team at like the Peace Race, which was raced in the formerly Czechoslovakia, Poland, East Germany, and when it was still, it was Germany by then, but it was still like you felt like you were in East Germany at times because you're on that side of the wall. And I led the Peace Race, and that race just has its notoriety and respect is huge. And I felt like it was just an honor to be there and be leading the race for 6 or 7 days. Right. I didn't end up winning it, but I was close. And
what's the prize money to win that race?
First was probably somewhere between around $30,000.
$30,000. Okay.
It's not like the Tour de France or anything like that.
But you're not making millions of dollars, but you're definitely earning enough to save a little bit possibly and do the things you want to do outside of cycling when season's over. You're coming back to Texas, right? I ended up, probably saving enough to put a down payment down on a house, if you can call that saving. But sure. After the season, like during this time in your life, you're on a professional team, but are you having to have a job when you're not in season? You come home, or are you just training?
No, I was training full time.
Full time.
I was still on salary over the winter. It didn't stop. It's a yearly salary. So. And
then it really kicks up. You get signed to Mapei Quick Step in '99. A huge team, huge known team, correct?
It was ranked number 1 in the world.
And you're riding with guys. I mean, can you name some of the faces that we're talking about?
Johan Museo, Tom Steels, Freddie Rodriguez, Michel Bartoli, Paulo Bettini.
Yeah, these are good ones.
These are all like Classic winners, Paris-Roubaix winners, the Edge Baston Edge world champions. So that environment was the top. You can't go anywhere you went from there. As the manager of the team told me, you're going down anywhere.
Who's managing Mapei?
Patrick Lefebvre.
Okay. Is Jonathan Vaughters? We know him in the cycling world is a team manager, a director, but most people that we're familiar with don't know his cycling prowess. Was he a pretty good racer?
He was an incredible climber.
Incredible climber. Okay.
Yeah.
You came in 5th in the World Championship road race that year. Went on Mapei, but you just mentioned Paris-Roubaix, the Hell of the North. Can you tell us a little about that race? Because people who don't race, myself included, can only imagine what that's like. But you rode Paris-Roubaix, right?
No, I did not.
You did not. Okay.
That team was such a high caliber team that I fit in more for the hilly type classics like Liège, Bastogne, Liège, Lombardy, Flèche Wallonne, stuff like that. Paris-Roubaix, it requires a specialist, and that team, Mapei, was stacked. There's if I would have made the team, I would have been the 8th person on the team.
Right.
But no, I didn't race it with Mapei. When I became a director for the under 23 team for Slipstream, I did know how to recon that course, and we ended up getting 2nd and 3rd in the under 23 version of Paris-Roubaix. So I spent a lot of time reconning those cobblestones.
It's an amazing place to be. After Mapei, not to jump too far ahead, you joined Mercury-Viatel, who's still around the tour, correct? And then that was a short stint, then on to US Postal. Right. Where you finished your career for 2 years, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's where you were reunited with your frenemy, Mr. Lance. In that period of time, though, you obviously you're in the spotlight. You're riding the tour with somebody who's obviously done what he did in the tour, but you're riding with you're on one of the best teams in the country or in the world, excuse me, if not the best team, and some of the talents around you. In fact, you rode with names like Christian Van de Velde, Floyd Landis, Freddie Rodriguez, you told me is still one of your friends, George Hincapie, Jan Ulrich. These are massive names. Roberto Haras, Tom Boonen. Any of those guys, any stories you can share with us about any of those particular names, since they're on people's brain who maybe aren't the biggest cycling fans?
Well, obviously.
It's a lot of names, sorry. Pick one.
It was Roberto Haras, Tom Boonen, and George Hincapie all come in, and Christian Van de Velde all come in play because we were all on the same team for Vuelta Catalonia one year, and Haras took the lead, and this was right before the Tour de France, and I remember sitting there just riding on the front every single day, and then I told Tom Boonen one day, I was like, okay, I think the Flemish word is Fullenbach, which means full gas. And it was right before a climb. And then, so when this was before he was a big name, and I was like, okay, hit it full gas. And we're doing 40, 42 miles an hour on the flats and going around these roundabouts, just flying before we had to make a right-hand turn before the last climb of the day. And we destroyed the whole bunch. The bunch is the peloton, and completely destroyed them, hit the climb, and the only guys left are some of the guys on my team that weren't pulling, and then 15 other guys, and then we finished the race, and Hincapie's comes up to me, he's like, why did you tell Tommy to go full gas, man? That was way too fast. I was seeing I was pinned, and I was like, I don't know, man, I just felt good, and I felt like we could just hammer it, and then we ended up winning the race, and Roberto was, the Vuelta Catalonia champion, so it all worked out. But I think it was even cooler, though, when I became Van de Velde's director. And I'm sitting there directing him, I'm doing the tactics for him in Tour of Missouri.
Is this Slipstream?
This is on Slipstream. We were sponsored by Garmin at the time. And he wins that, and everything comes together. And then I go to the next big race, Tour of Colorado. We get second there. And then we go to Tour of Utah, and Tom Danielson is one of my guys that I'm directing. Everything goes down really well there. We win that. And then we go to Tour of Alberta in Canada, and we win that with Rohan Dennis. So it was just, I don't know. I felt like felt rewarded that you could take something that you did full time as an athlete, and then you were able to apply that as a director and use the same tactics that you learned from, Johan Boynell or Patrick Lefebvre, and put that all into play, and then actually have it come into fruition. And that's where I felt the most satisfied, really.
For someone who doesn't understand necessarily, what does it feel like to ride in a peloton on a pro race? Is there a feeling you can describe for us?
So,
because on the TV, just to clear up that, it's a lot of people in a small space riding extremely fast in most cases. Is there a feeling that it gives you that you could relay to us?
Well, if you're racing in somewhere like Holland, there's so much road furniture. We call it road furniture. Those are like bike lanes, roundabouts, all kinds like different obstacles in the roadway that you don't have here in the US. So you're basically playing Frogger. This is just this video game where you have to like get around all these obstacles on the bike with 150 people around you going, 30 miles an hour, and hoping that everyone can handle their bike as well as you can. Some people adapt to it. Some people grow up doing it from the time they're like, 13 or 14 years old.
Surely.
To getting, adults who are like 24 years old. They just got their first contract and they're from the US, but they've never ridden in a bunch like that. They have a hard time adapting.
Right.
Like it starts at a young age. And I think everyone can remember like their first days as a bike racer, suiting up as I guess the starting level used to be category 5 or something. And they put you in this category 5 road race and you're in your kit. You have no idea how to handle your bike. And about every 5 minutes, there's a crash. That can be pretty much the same as the stage 1 in the Tour de France. So it's not easy, and those skills are hard to pick up.
No doubt. So you mentioned crashing, Chann. What how many have you been involved in roughly, and how's your body? Have you broken things over the years racing?
I have. I've broken numerous bones. I know that I vividly remember crashing in, I think it was 2002 in 4 Days of Dunkirk, breaking my elbow, having to not be able to finish that race because of the broken bone, going back to the United States, training with a cast on my left arm, and just sitting there just going, how am I going to, perform at nationals at US Pro? And this was 2002. I was 6 weeks on my own in a cast, but I was training my butt off. Like people didn't know it, but I was being motor paced like every other day. I was putting in 6-hour rides, and then the arm started getting better. There were a couple warm-up races before US Pro, and I did okay, but then we hit US Pro in 2002. I was working for George Hincapie. Frankie Andrea was he was our director, and he's calling the shots from the team car. And I was like, Frankie, it's like, we'd already done like 140 miles into the race or something like that. And I was like, Frankie, I feel good. I'm going to attack the next time up the climb. And he was like, sure, go for it. Just know that if George catches back up, you're going to work for him in the sprint. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Well, I attacked, and only 1 or 2 other guys came with me. One was Canadian, one was American, Danny Pate. So technically, to become the US Pro Champion, I only needed to beat Danny Pate. So we come to the line in Philadelphia, and back then Philly was probably the biggest race in the United States. And I was like, I just have to beat Danny Pate in the sprint. That's all I have to do, and I'll get the jersey. And it all worked out. I got the jersey. I was US Pro Champion, and that all comes back to that me breaking my elbow in 4 Days of Dunkirk, because that probably would have never happened had I not been sent home to do the specialized training that I ended up doing.
Right. That's incredible. Just a couple highlights that I don't want to overlook these, but in 2000, you were with Mapei. You came in 17th in the general classification in the Giro d'Italia, one of the biggest races in the world. 2002, you're second in the US Pro Championships, first in the National Championship Road Race Elite. You were the first in the team trial stage 1 in the Volta Ciclista alla Catalunya.
Catalonia, yeah.
Messed that up, I'm sure, but you had an incredible time trial team there, but you guys came in first in stage 1. Let's talk about US Postal quick, since they came up early. But when you're on US Postal with Lance, what's the general vibe on the team, and how's that general team concept work when you're on that team?
Postal is locked down. There wasn't a lot of freedom. There was more freedom on Mapei to, go into we call it the final of the races, where you're trying to get into the last 50K of the race and just throw down everything you got left in you, throw down just attack after attack and try and win the races. At Postal, you had a little bit of freedom to do that, but the program obviously was, tailored towards Lance winning the Tour de France every year. Mm-hmm. And it built, every race built off of the one prior to it to be able to get the team and Lance into perfect form for day one of the Tour de France. So the experience in general, when I look back on it, like with Johan Bornell and Lance, was a great experience. I learned tons. And it just, for me, I don't think it was the perfect team because it's like lessons learned. When you go back in time and you look at things, and I'm like, I should have stayed at Mapei my entire career. Mm-hmm. And Patrick Lefebvre was right. It's like, wherever you go, you're stepping down, dude. Yeah, I was like, I should have listened to that guy.
Was Johan Bornell a good guy to race for?
Yeah, he's incredible. I mean, he knows so much. He's tactically, he was the best. I mean,
is that what makes him unique? Is that he understands tactics in a way most people don't?
Yeah, he does. He's Belgian, but it's that international flavor. He's raced everywhere. He's led. He beat Miguel Indurain in a stage in the Tour de France. I mean, the guy was a legit bike racer, and then he became a brilliant director. So
awesome. I have to ask, because people who watch this will only wonder, doping when you're on Postal or before. You can say whatever you want, Chann, but we all know what happened with Lance. How was, in your mind, what can you talk about that a little bit, and how whatever it is you can share with us, and how that affected you or didn't affect you, or what you saw or didn't see? Can you speak to the doping?
Well, the thing is that people always come to the assumption that doping was like one person on the team does it, so obviously they think the entire team's doping, or the doctor for the team is providing, banned substances for the entire team. And back then, that's not the way it worked. It's guys, individual pros, were going out and seeking these sketchy doctors from Spain, Italy, wherever that may be, hiring them and giving them 20% or so of their salary.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it wasn't cheap. And you had a choice, you're already, to get to that level, you have to be awesome. You have to have many national championships under your belt, that you held the title, or you performed without substances. And then you get to that point where, okay, you make the choice. Do you want that 1 or 2% extra? Or do you want to race, we call it pan y agua, which means bread and water, and stay where you are? Some guys made that choice of, I'm going to privately hire X doctor. I'm going to give him 20% of my salary, and, I'm going to get that 1 to 2% extra. But I think what the general public doesn't understand is that you can't make a donkey a thoroughbred.
Right.
And so if you're already a thoroughbred, that was my motto, is just, believe in yourself, and, you can take it as far as you want. But it was, the thing that sucked is that you were getting these guys that I know, they weren't very good, but all of a sudden they were on another level.
Right.
And you're just that's just not right. That dude's, I knew him as an amateur. He was not that strong. And now he's destroying me.
Yeah. Well, I'm not Oprah, as you clearly know, but I'm asking, did you have to make that choice as far as EPO or any of the doping scenarios that were going on?
If I wanted, well, I did want to win the Tour of France, but I did, I guess, and I wanted it bad, but not to the extent of blood doping.
Right.
I just taking blood out and putting it back in just wasn't something that that was too far.
It wasn't encouraged by Johan or anybody on your team. It was just like, if you're going to do it, stay private, or was it encouraged at all?
It wasn't, I wouldn't say encouraged. I would say that if a rider was going to undertake that, they didn't need the encouragement to do so.
Fair. Okay. You retire from pro cycling, and the next chapter in your life comes aboard. You directed a development team in Belgium, and then ultimately Slipstream, which you already mentioned. This is happening, and then another thing happens to you. You're living in Austin at this point, right? And you were introduced to potentially working for the Austin Police Department. How did this come to happen?
So it was, well, prior to that, in 2007 or 8, I took the job with USA Cycling to.
Okay. I overlooked a big chunk. I'm sorry. I didn't want to. Yes, please continue.
Well, yeah, there's just this bridge from 2007 to 2014 that I had the opportunity to work with USA Cycling and direct their kind of as a co-director of the national team.
Okay.
And then be the manager for their trade team, which was VMG, Hollow Wesco Partners, which was awesome guys out of the Bahamas who totally, to this day, still back cycling. And I became really good friends with them and helped, I ran the team as a DS, as a manager, and that just kind of evolved into me working for Slipstream. Mark Holowesco, Stefan Holowesco were really good friends with Jonathan Vaughters.
Right.
And so Jonathan called me up, I think it was in 2008 or something like that. He's like, hey, I need to have an under 23 team for my world team. I want you to run it. Will you do it? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's go for it. So that started the under 23 team, which was back then the title sponsor was Garmin. It's currently EF now. And I did that all the way until 2012 or so. And then I guess I graduated into the world team and started working in the world tour. But at the same time, the challenge for me was always, okay, as a director, you don't have the same luxury as a rider who's getting 2 to 3 year contracts at a time. You're going every 12 months, you're up for renewal. And I was like, do I want to do this like until I'm whatever old, every single 12 months, like having to negotiate another contract. I mean, I can do it and I enjoy the sport, but I started riding with some friends who are on APD and they're like, hey, APD pays well. Do you know that? And I was like, no, how much they pay? And it was like, that's not bad. He's like, and they're like, you know that you get health insurance and a pension and you get to do cool work and all this stuff. I was like, that's interesting.
You wanted some stability in your life.
Yeah, it's government work. It's stable. So I looked into it and I put in my application and I was accepted. And from 2014 and that's what I've been doing since then, really. I
got to believe, forgive me, but you got to be one of the best bike cops to ever live based on your previous life. I mean, can you share with us any tales from the scene?
Yeah, well, I mean, I teach the police mountain bike school at the academy as well. So at APD, they knew that, okay, well, I guess he's an asset. I mean, he rides his bike all the time. He knows how to handle his bike. Can he ride his bike and chase bad guys at the same time and do everything right in the process? And yeah, I mean, I've been in numerous pursuits and, where some major felonies going off and I'm on my bike and I have to get there fast. And it's about like knowing how to get from point A to point B safely, fast, and then taking a subject into custody that's just committed a felony without excessive force and also not getting yourself hurt at the same time. So it's a really fine balance, and everything's kind of on the line still.
For sure. So you're not like jumping off your bike onto a suspect based on your, I mean, it's not quite like that, but you're getting there quickly, maybe quicker than the cars because of your agility on a bike, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, because you can take sidewalks, you can take alleys. A lot of the stuff you're doing is at night and it's very dark. And yeah, you do need to know how to dismount your bike quickly, and you need to know how to approach the suspect, and then you need to see if the suspect's armed. Right. What are you going to do? What's your level of force are you going to use? Or are you going to have to bring it way back down because this isn't a call or anything like that? Sometimes you just don't know exactly what you're going into.
For sure. You have, let's see, 2014, you started that. So you've told me in times, or we've talked before, you've run into like Bezos several times in Austin, just walking out of his building and things of that nature. You've probably seen some of the friendly faces around Austin doing that. Are you a known entity on the streets in Austin because of who you are and what you're doing?
Occasionally. So I'll be sitting there with some of the guys on my shift at, like, we have these small grocery stores called Royal Blue, and we're like, let's go get water. We're really thirsty or whatever, and we'll take a break and we'll sit down. And I'll walk up to my shift mates and be like, hey, do you know this guy at APD? His name's Chann McRae. And I'll just sit there and they'll be like, yeah, I know him. And then
heard
eventually
of him.
they'll introduce me to him, etc. But
that's great.
That's usually those people though are in the cycling world, you know, and then they found out that I became a cop locally.
It's a huge cycling community, Austin. Obviously, you know, Lance's habitation there has made it a bigger scene, but lots of people cycle down there. So it's a huge community for people like you, working wise, and then just for recreation. Recreationally, you are still doing triathlete type stuff. In fact, you just ran a Boston Marathon recently, right?
I did. I ran it. Actually, I ran it in October, which was the makeup year for 2020 because everything was locked down. So then they had it again in April. So I raced it in October and April.
How'd you do in April?
April went better than October. October was good. I ran like a 2:59. It was solid, but I suffered for sure going through the Newton Hills because my hamstring started getting tighter. I think I had a little bit of a hamstring injury going into it. The mileage was good, but training through the Texas summer for the October one was brutal. But then I was like, okay, they opened up registration again for the April one. I was like, I know I can go faster. And I put in the miles again, but this time the difference was I was putting the miles in during the winter time.
Right.
So the miles were higher quality. I went into the race injury free, and like we started, and I don't know, I was on a great day. Sometimes you're just on a great day. I look down, I'm like 6:30 first mile. I was like, that's good. That's a little bit faster.
6:30 mile. Okay.
I was like, that's a little bit faster than what it needs to be, but like my perceived exertion's really low. And then I kept hitting it. I was like 6:30, 6:35, creep up to 6:40 sometimes, back down to like 6:35. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to go with it. And I ended up hitting Newton Hills. And I remember it was the Naval Academy had a team, and there were like 5 guys, and they're all in Naval Academy like kit, and they're talking. They're like, here are the Newton Hills. These are a bitch, man. I was like, yeah, I remember them from October, but let's go. And there are 3 hills that they're challenging because they come at like 17 miles, and you can lose pace big time when you hit those. And my goal is like, okay, no matter what, I don't want to run any of these miles under 7 for these 3 miles where these climbs are in Newton. And I kept hitting them. None of them went above 7. And all the Naval Academy guys, they were just, they were getting shattered because at first they were all running together and talking. But then I come off the hills, start coming into Boston proper, and I look next to me, and I think it's on my right, and the guy running next to me, it says NYPD. I was like, this is cool. Oh, yeah. This is very random. And we like finished almost the same time, like 2 hours and 51 minutes or something.
2:51.
And
that's fantastic.
I was like, wow, I just dropped a significant amount of time from October to now. But for me, it comes down to like, I was healthy, no hamstring injury, and putting in just better mileage because the temps were so much cooler in the wintertime.
Well done, man. That's fantastic. All right, and coming to the last part of your interview today, what are you doing these days? You just become the director of a new team. Something magical seems to be transpiring, and you're part of it. What's going on these days?
Well, as you know, Roxo Racing is the team that I was asked to direct in 2022, and my first, gig back was Tour of Gila, and I had a great experience there. And I was like, I still love this stuff. I mean, I still enjoy directing. I still enjoy being with the riders. I enjoy setting the tactics for the day, and being around these people is all just a super positive environment. And then I was like, and then there was this rider there who is going to ride for us in 23, Emily Marcolini, who was not supported at the race, had asked us prior to the race if we could help her out just with giving her water bottles, like so that, she would be able to survive the race. Well, she did a little bit more than survive it. She actually won the hardest stage there. And I was like, here you have like one of the fastest females in North America coming over to our Airbnb to retrieve the bottles that she gave us so that she can take all the empty bottles back and refill them for the next morning and then give them back to us with zero support. And we're like, man, we'll help you out however we can. We'll even make your bottles. I don't care. But I guess this cool relationship formed, and then things just started falling into place, and we just started signing like these really big names that they're at this level where they're good enough to be in a world team. But I think like for 23, they want to showcase themselves, and we're like, we're going to give you the platform. We know how good you are. Maybe you didn't get the support that you needed in 21 and 22, but 23, you're going to have it, and you're going to be able to launch on this platform. So
this Roxo Racing team is set to become a pro national team next year. With Emily's one of these women you talk about. How many members of the team will there be?
So far we have 8 signed. We're looking at signing 2 more.
2 more. And obviously some people know this. The Tour de France Femme just completed a few weeks ago, the first one since 1989. Is it fair to say that the women's pro cycling world is on an uptick right now because of this, and maybe there's more to come? I mean, women's cycling over the years has struggled. Is it fair to say that there seems to be some increased interest in the sport right now?
I would say it's completely turned the corner.
Beautiful.
I was during the Tour de Femme, I was in Holland, and obviously Amanique won the Tour de Femme. A lot of Americans probably don't even know who she is unless you follow the sport closely, but over there, like on the most popular talk shows, like right after the Tour de Femme finished, she was in the spotlight.
So Annie van Vleuten?
Yes.
Tell me more about her real quick, sorry.
She's an incredible rider. The way she destroyed the field in the last
She's a celebrity in the...
She's a complete celebrity in Holland, and so is Voss, but like they're...
Marianne Voss, you're speaking
Yes,
of.
they're basically like household names over there. I mean, they call Voss a goat, and she legit is. And then you have Amanique, who comes in the Tour de Femme in the last 2 days. Like the way that she rode was just incredible. I mean, she just destroyed the field, and you're like, this is where women's racing is going, and it literally has turned the corner. And I think for the next decade, it's going to be the thing.
Will Roxo Racing see itself in racing in Europe someday? Is that part of the goal?
Our goal is to move from women's pro continental to women's world team. And I think with you involved, JW, and then getting some more guys on board, that we're going to make that happen.
It's pretty incredible, Chann. Well, they're lucky to have you. Your bank of knowledge cannot be overlooked. What nationally speaking, women's cycling, how healthy a sport is it right now? Does the European transition over to national over here? What does the sport need to proliferate itself? Excuse me, I butchered that word, but what does the sport need from fans, and does it need more fandom, more exposure?
It's these riders, I mean, to me, they deserve to be like the marketing efforts that should be put into it need to increase like tenfold. I mean, like I said, like in Holland, it's there, but for that to happen in the US, we need to get marketing agencies completely behind it. Because the potential's there. It just hasn't been capitalized on yet.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Real quickly, you're married, you have 2 children. How old are your kids?
21 and 18.
Are they cyclists?
So the thing is, they kind of rebelled against cycling, but when you put them on the bike, when you put them on a bike, it's like, how do you know how to ride so well? Like, they can handle their bikes great. So, I mean, if they do want to, take up cycling, then I'll 100% be behind it, but they're so busy in college right now. And all
is your
that
wife
stuff.
a cyclist?
She's ex-pro, and she won some major races in North America, and I think that's where they get their bike handling from.
Very nice. Thank you for joining us today. One of the questions we ask our guests, aside from marital affairs, family, anything family related, what would you tell us is the best day of your whole life? If you're able to.
That's funny. I don't know if I'd say it was just like shocked me as like best day, or just say this is pretty badass, was that my youngest daughter, who's 18 now, like when she was I think like 11 or something, she was Naga world champion at jiu-jitsu, and we trained together a lot. And then one day in our house, we were playing around, and I was like, she's starting to get kind of like really good. And like, I'm not holding back that much. And she puts this rear naked choke on me. And I'm like, dude, she wasn't letting go. And I was like, this is like, she's freaking trained now. Like, and I was just like, this is so cool.
That's awesome. Great answer. Great answer. And I forgot to mention one thing is you got pulled into MMA training, part of your training, but you have fought one MMA fight in your life. Tell us briefly about that, and then we'll get you out of here.
Yeah, that was a big part of my life. I still follow the sport. Became a hobby that I put a lot into, training up to 2 to 3 hours a day of mixed martial arts training. And at one point in time, I got the opportunity. They're like, hey, there's a cage fight. They need guys. We think you're ready. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. Okay, we'll talk to the promoter. We'll see if we can get you in. They got me in. I represented the mixed martial arts gym that I was training at. And the fight, the guy I fought, my opponent had 10 fights. I had 0. So he had more experience, but the fight went deep into the third round, and we were only fighting 3 rounds. It wasn't championship fights go for 5, but obviously this was an amateur fight. We're in the third round, and on points we're pretty even. He throws, I think it's at 2 minutes and something into the third round. He throws a good overhand right, lands it. I hit the ground. He mounts, starts ground and pound, and I'm trying to escape, which I still to this day think I was going to escape, but the ref stops the fight. And so it was a technical knockout, and I got up. I was fine. I wasn't dazed. I was like, why'd you stop the fight? And then that was that.
Awesome stuff. Chann McRae, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. You're a fascinating guy. We wish you luck with Roxo Racing. I think they're in great shape with you as one of the directors. Can't wait to see what happens with the team, but you got an awesome opportunity ahead of you. Thank you for what you do for the police department. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Captex Bank, for sponsoring all this. We appreciate the time, man.
Likewise, appreciate everything you've done.
Fortitude, Fort Worth.
Roxo Media House.